Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into an absolutely fascinating transformation. We're going to unpack how a nation's social fabric, its demographics, and its technology are all deeply, almost invisibly interconnected. And we're going to use India's macro environment as our blueprint to really understand these massive societal shifts. So, if you've ever found yourself wondering how deep-rooted historical traditions actually morph into modern, fast-paced societies, well, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get into it. Here's a quick roadmap for today's explainer. 1. From monistic to pluralistic. 2. India's demographic transition. 3. Culture and technological catalysts. 4. The changing value system. And 5. Business and social responsibility. Section 1. From monistic to pluralistic. Okay, think about how things used to be. Historically, the primary social institution was the village community. This was what we call a monistic society. Basically, your occupation was largely determined by the caste you were born into, your conduct was strictly guided by village elders, and custom just ruled everything. It was a very singular way of life. But industrial growth and the rise of massive organizations completely shattered that single institution model. We've evolved into a pluralistic society now. Today, we have choice-based mobility. People just aren't bound to traditional hereditary skills anymore. And what's really interesting is that social status is now way more likely to be determined by your income and wealth rather than your birthright. Plus, as people pack up and move to urban centers chasing all these new opportunities, we are seeing the slow, steady breakdown of the traditional joint family. It's a huge structural shift. Moving right along to Section 2, India's demographic transition. 84.39 crore. Roughly 843 million people. That was the population of India back in 1991. To put that into perspective, it was up from just 36.10 crore in 1951. I mean, that is a massive, staggering jump. And it beautifully illustrates what demographers call the second stage of demographic transition. See, in this stage, public health measures improve dramatically, which causes death rates to fall considerably. But the birth rates, they remain really high. And the result of that mismatch is rapid, almost exponential population growth, incredibly high population density, and a really heavy burden on land and natural resources. But the real story hidden inside these numbers is the qualitative aspect of this population change. Take a look at the 0 to 14 age group. Even though it's projecting slightly downward over time, it still represents this massive, bottom-heavy youth pyramid. And what does that actually mean? It means a continuously growing workforce, with millions of new job seekers flooding into the market every single year. But at the exact same time, the percentage of folks 60 and above is climbing. Thanks to much better healthcare, life expectancy in India jumped from about 32 years in the 1940s to a projected 65 years around the year 2000. So society is simultaneously getting a lot younger at the bottom and living way longer at the top. Section 3. Culture and technological catalysts. Let's establish a shared vocabulary for a second. Culture is essentially the learned responses of a society. It's the whole package of behaviors, values, and norms passed down from our elders. But here is the absolute crucial point to remember. Culture is not static. It doesn't just sit still. Industrial development, science, and even better transportation are actively altering people's tastes, their preferences, and their daily habits. Even religion, a core element of culture that provides such strong emotional bonds, is experiencing a huge shift right now as societies gradually move away from strict orthodoxies and sectarianism toward much more secular, modern outlooks. Now, let me ask you a question. How could a purely physical invention, like literally just a bunch of metal and gears in the internal combustion engine, actually alter a society's moral and cultural values? It sounds crazy, but it's fascinating. The invention of the automobile didn't just speed up how fast we travel. It operated as this massive cultural multiplier. It changed where people chose to build their homes and habitats, it completely transformed consumption patterns, and it fundamentally altered lifestyle norms and daily mobility. Technology doesn't just change the tools we use, it completely changes how we live together. But look, we have to be honest here. Technology is absolutely not an unmixed blessing. On the positive side, sure, the advancements are undeniable. Telecommunications give us instantaneous knowledge transfer, and higher industrial productivity leads to way better living standards and amazing disease control. However, there are some really serious, socially undesirable consequences too. We're talking about the indiscriminate depletion of natural resources, widespread environmental pollution, and this insatiable consumerism that often ends up elevating machines over human beings. And that, unfortunately, can lead to a real deterioration of basic human values. Section 4. The changing value system. Over the last 50 years or so, heavily influenced by Western industrial growth, there has been a massive shift in India's value system. We are rapidly moving away from theoretical values like truth and religious values like morality. And what are we moving toward? Economic values, the relentless pursuit of material gain and practical materialism. Honestly, it's reached the point where a deeply principled, honest philosopher might actually have a surprisingly hard time getting approved for a mortgage today. The spread of modern education and global trade has really led people to believe that accumulating wealth and looking out for your own self-interest are paramount. Individualism is just sweeping the outlook of the modern citizen. And at the same time, this erosion of traditional moral values, things like righteousness and honesty, well, it really seems to threaten the very social fabric that holds our communities together. Section 5. Business and Social Responsibility. I want you to listen to this powerful quote from Ralph Miliband because it brilliantly illustrates the sheer gravity of corporate power today. He points out that because the business class has the ability to literally mold public opinion, and because they control crucially important areas of our economic life, they hold immense social and political weight. Big business houses exert such a profound influence over government policies that traditional state control becomes incredibly difficult, sometimes nearly impossible. And because businesses possess this massive, unprecedented power, a major debate has sparked. Should they actively be forced to take on social responsibilities, or is that completely overstepping their bounds? Now, traditionally, a lot of folks argued firmly against corporate social responsibility. The strict economic argument is simply that a business's one and only duty is to maximize profit for its shareholders, right? And that tackling social or environmental issues, well, that should strictly be the government's job. But here's the reality check. In this newly pluralistic, highly populated landscape, a landscape facing profound ecological crises like rampant deforestation, toxic pollution, and indiscriminate resource use, that strict divide is just no longer practical. Businesses simply cannot exist in a vacuum anymore. They are increasingly being called upon to resolve these huge crises, mainly because they actually have the resources and the influence to do so. They have to find a way to balance their modern drive for self-interest and profit with the absolute non-negotiable necessity of preserving societal and ecological stability. What you should really take away from this is that today, business values and social values are completely, permanently intertwined. So, we're going to wrap up the explainer with this final thought. We've seen exactly how a society transforms from quiet, caste-based villages to loud, pluralistic, tech-driven urban centers. We've seen our core values completely shift from the collective and the moral straight to the individual and the economic. So the ultimate question we are left staring at is this. Can we actually continue to aggressively pursue economic growth, technological advancement, and fierce individualism without completely unraveling the traditional social fabric that holds us all together? It is an incredibly delicate balance, and how we choose to answer it will absolutely define the next century. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the world around you.